I recently landed a job as a night watchman, and the things I guard are nothing short of terrifying. I never gave much thought to the phrase hiding in plain sight until I started working here. The job listing was brief. Wanted, nighttime security guard. No details, just that and a phone number. My town's small, barely a blip on the highway to somewhere more important. Yet somehow, we have a museum. I've never seen anyone actually go in, and I've always wondered how it manages to stay open. Still, when I called the number, the man who picked up told me to come by that evening for an interview. He sounded overly enthusiastic, like he'd been waiting for someone to respond. When I asked what the job involved, he just said, "Oh, the usual stuff for a security guard." I've read a few threads online about odd things happening on night shifts, but I always figured those were just stories. As I made my way up the broad stone steps, clearly built for crowds that no longer came, the silence and shadows were unnerving. The only company I had were the old lamps casting flickering pools of light and the stone gargoyles looming above. Their cold eyes seemed to follow me, and I half expected one to leap down and offer me up to some ancient god. If the pay hadn't already been agreed on and been surprisingly generous, I might have turned around and gone home. It was definitely higher than I expected for a job like this. But climbing those empty steps gave me a clue. No one else wanted to be here. More than once I'd heard people whisper the word haunted. The front of the building looked even more imposing under the scattered lights, shadows dancing across its facade like something out of a horror movie. I paused at the top, thinking of all those cinematic moments where the characters could have just walked away and avoided disaster, but didn't. A sudden gust of wind blew against me, almost like a warning, urging me to turn back. For a brief second, I considered it. Then I remembered the rent and the overdue car payment. So I pushed open the heavy door, wondering if I'd come back out. To my surprise, it didn't creak or groan like I expected. It swung open smoothly and silently despite its weight. The lavish decor and intricate details took me by surprise. I hadn't known what to expect, but as I stood there, I found myself regretting that this was my first time ever setting foot in the museum. I'd barely taken 2 steps inside when a man appeared, elegantly dressed, smiling warmly. He didn't walk so much as glide toward me, moving with a refined grace that hinted at nobility. "Mr. Welton, I presume?" he asked, his tone pleasant. "Yes, sir," I replied, extending my hand. He glanced at it with a mildly amused expression, but didn't take it. "Right then, follow me, and I'll walk you through your responsibilities," he said, smoothly turning on his heel and gliding away without missing a beat. Feeling awkward, I quickly pretended to adjust my hair and followed after him, mentally kicking myself for offering a handshake. We passed several impressive pieces of artwork before arriving at a modest desk tucked into a corner. "Here's the deal," he said. "You'll be responsible for checking all the doors. Make sure nothing gets in," he paused, "or out." "You mean like stolen?" I asked. "Yes," he replied slowly and deliberately. "Stolen." "So I have the job?" He gave me a blank look. "You showed up, didn't you?" I nodded. "Then you've got the job. Do I need a uniform or something?" "Let's see how your first night goes," he said. "There's a list of rules on the sheet by your desk. Please follow them carefully. You're expected to do at least 1 full round through every room and check every door." "Just 1 round? This building is sizable and challenging." I glanced around with a touch of unease. Maybe the generous pay really was too good to be true. "If anything goes wrong," he continued, "just call the number listed on the sheet." "That's all?" "I believe so. I'll lock the entrance behind me and unlock it again at 9 a.m. when I return." I walked over to the desk and picked up the paper. "What's this supposed to mean?" I asked, turning back, but the man was gone. "Hello?" I called out, but only my voice echoed back at me. I turned my attention to the sheet again and started reading the so-called rules. Rule 1, there are no rules. Rule 2, There are no rules. What is this, Fight Club? I muttered. Every time you break a rule, return to rule number 1. Wait, how do I break a rule when there aren't any? Rule 3, how you follow the rules is as important as why you follow the rules. That doesn't make any sense. Rule 4, if you are caught breaking the rules, the penalties may be severe. Okay, something's seriously off. This is just nonsense. I reread the sheet. The wording was strange, but stranger still were the capital letters. They weren't random. I went back and looked more closely, focusing on each capital letter in turn. It felt like there was a hidden message waiting to be uncovered. They're watching. I froze, staring at the message. Who's watching? I whispered, half expecting an answer to come from the shadows. With no response, I looked back at the paper, hoping that the rest of the rules might start making sense. Rule number 5, do not, under any circumstances, make noise every time you do a round. Another hidden message jumped out at me. Don't move. Message received. I stood perfectly still, suddenly afraid to even breathe too loudly. How long was I supposed to hold this pose? Was someone going to walk in and tell me the game was over? I almost laughed at how ridiculous it all felt, like I was trapped in some bizarre version of freeze tag. But then the air in the room began to change. The temperature dropped rapidly. My breath came out in thick clouds like smoke billowing from an old steam engine. I fought the urge to rub my arms, but a different kind of chill settled deep in my bones, one that had nothing to do with the cold. Something was behind me. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel it. Something massive, quiet as death, creeping closer. My skin crawled as hot, humid breath rolled over the back of my neck. But instead of warming me, it made me colder, so cold my muscles ached from trying not to shiver. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to give me away. Then came the smell. Rot, decay. The unmistakable stench of death hung in the air like fog. Whatever this thing was, it embodied every nightmare I'd ever had. And though I wanted more than anything to run or scream or open my eyes just a crack, I didn't move. I couldn't. I focused every ounce of strength on staying as still as a statue. The presence drifted away, moving to the far side of the room. As it left, so did some of the icy air. And then, just like that, it was gone. I waited a few long moments, unwilling to risk moving too soon. When I finally felt safe enough to breathe again, my legs nearly gave out from under me. Relief and panic swirled in my chest like a storm. I looked down at the paper on the desk with a whole new kind of fear. Was it meant to protect me, or was it just an ominous warning of what was to come? I hesitated, debating whether I even wanted to read the rest of it. Was the paycheck worth this? A few hours earlier, I would have laughed at the idea of being dragged into some hellish nightmare. Now it didn't seem so far-fetched. I made my way toward the exit, fully ready to call it quits and inform my new boss I wouldn't be finishing the shift. But the door had other ideas. I pushed the crash bar, nothing. I twisted the deadbolt, it wouldn't budge. After several minutes of struggling and swearing under my breath, I finally gave up, shoulders heavy with frustration. I had no choice but to stay. All I could do now was find a corner, sit down, and pray that morning would come quickly. I sat at the desk and spun lazily in the chair, silently willing the next 9 hours and 13 minutes to pass faster. After just 5 minutes, boredom crept in. Out of habit, I glanced down at the paper again. Rule number 6. You can't just sit at the desk and wait for the door to open upon the ending of your shift. The capitalized letters spelled out, "Suck it up." "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. "Someone's having a great time messing with me." As if in response, I noticed 3 small letters printed just beneath the rule. Yes. I stepped away from the desk, shaken. That paper was starting to feel less like a list of guidelines and more like a sentient presence watching my every move. I needed to get away from it, even if that meant facing what was behind the next door. My hand hovered over the knob of the room where that unholy thing had vanished. My courage faltered until I spotted a note taped to the door. The only way out is through. With a deep breath and a heavy heart, I turned the handle. The door creaked open slowly, and as I stepped inside and closed it behind me, I noticed another message on the back of the door. Avoid eye contact and you'll be fine. I didn't understand at first, but when I turned to face the room, the meaning became terrifyingly clear. It was filled with taxidermy-style displays, stuffed creatures of all shapes and sizes. But these weren't ordinary animals. They were legends, myths, cryptids, Bigfoot, Skinwalker, Dogman, Jersey Devil, Wendigo. As my eyes moved across the room, something shifted. Just a small motion, but enough. The Skinwalker had turned its head to look straight at me. I tore my gaze away in panic, only to feel the unmistakable weight of another stare. The Dogman had turned too. Fear raced through me like ice water. Instinct screamed at me to bolt back through the door, but I remembered what those notes said. The only way out is through. Avoid eye contact and you'll be fine. I hated how that second line felt like saying, if you just hold tight enough on a roller coaster, you won't need a seatbelt. Keeping my eyes glued to the floor, I began inching forward, trying to stay calm despite the growing dread clawing at my chest. At first, the room was quiet. Then the growls started, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. They were all around me. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. All I could do was walk, carefully, slowly, counting every step, praying it wouldn't be my last. Then something blocked my path. Two thick, hairy legs stood directly in front of me. A low growl rolled out so deep it rattled the air in my lungs. "Oh dear God," I whispered, barely able to breathe. This is it, I thought. This is how I die, shredded to bits by a monster out of folklore. Fighting every instinct, I edged to the side, squeezing past without looking up. I focused only on my feet, each step feeling like a gamble with death. I didn't dare lift my head. The creatures moved behind me, lumbering, stalking, breathing. The sound of claws and heavy limbs surrounded me, making my skin crawl. I was too focused to notice I had reached the far wall until I bumped into it. Dazed and momentarily stunned, I looked to my right. There it was, the exit, my escape. I reached for the handle, heart racing. Just as I opened the door, I made the mistake of glancing back. And that's when I saw it, the Wendigo. Its eyes locked with mine. It let out a roar so loud, so full of rage and hunger, that it shook me to my core. That sound will haunt me for the rest of my life. The Wendigo lunged at me with terrifying speed, claws extended, fangs bared, and ready to rip me apart. I threw myself through the door just in time and slammed it shut behind me. A loud thud struck the other side of the wall, shaking the frame and sending a puff of dust cascading to the floor, making me sneeze. As I caught my breath, I noticed another note taped to the door. "Whatever you do, don't make a sound." I was about to mutter something sarcastic about how it was a little late for that when something huge lunged at me from the shadows. Rows of fangs slicing through the air, attached to the biggest snake I had ever seen. The impact with the door had only stunned it momentarily. My legs kicked into action, and I bolted across the room. The dim lighting made it almost impossible to see, and the floor was cluttered with rocks and debris, turning my frantic sprint into an obstacle course. I swear one of the rocks moved into my path on purpose, but what should have been a fatal trip saved my life. The massive serpent sailed overhead, missing me by inches. If I hadn't fallen, its fangs would have gone straight through me. No time to celebrate. I scrambled to my feet and made another dash for the door, now in sight. So was the snake, which had recovered and was coiling for another strike. Thinking fast, I veered around a massive boulder to throw off its aim. I aimed for a point a few feet to the side of the door. At the last possible second, I dove. The snake lashed out, soaring over me again and crashing into the wall just as I hit the ground and sprang up to fling the door open. I slammed it shut behind me and leaned against it, gasping for breath and seriously rethinking my future approach to job interviews. I blinked, trying to adjust to the new room, only to realize my eyes were already open, pitch black. I pulled out my flashlight and switched it on, but the beam barely penetrated the darkness. The only things I could see were the door behind me and a sliver of floor in front. There was no sign of a ceiling, no walls, nothing. The darkness felt like it swallowed the light itself. With my sight useless, I strained to hear anything, growls, hissing, footsteps, anything, but there was only silence. Not peaceful silence, but a suffocating, oppressive void. Carefully, I began walking forward, sweeping my flashlight from side to side. The echo of my footsteps was the only indication that I was still in a room. It sounded normal, too normal, and that scared me more than anything else. There was only one odd detail, a faint, sterile scent of disinfectant in the air. I couldn't tell if it was from a creature that had claimed this room as its hunting ground, maybe one that left corpses behind, or if the creature itself had died and someone had come to clean up the mess. Either way, I was on edge, every nerve on high alert, ready for whatever came next. They say when one of your senses weakens, the others become sharper to compensate. In my case, it wasn't so much my senses that heightened, it was my paranoia. In the suffocating blackness, I imagined shadows shifting and creeping around me. My steps became tiny and cautious, each one slow and deliberate. I extended my arms like makeshift sensors, feeling my way forward and bracing for anything unexpected. It felt like it took an eternity to cross the room at that pace, but caution had a price, and I was willing to pay it. Eventually, the flashlight began to illuminate more than just the floor. I must have reached the far end. As visibility returned, I realized I'd wandered off course. The door wasn't directly ahead, but rather a good 50 feet off to the side. I followed the wall along the edge until I reached it. I grasped the handle and opened the door, only to be met with a horrifying sight. The snake. It was coiled directly in front of the door, fangs bared and ready to strike. I slammed it shut just in time. My first thought, why are there two snake rooms? But quickly, I remembered that asking why in this place didn't get you very far. Then it hit me, the worst case scenario. This wasn't a second snake, it was the same one. I had walked in a massive circle inside that dark room. As denial began to claw at my mind, I tried to focus on a solution. I needed to cross the room again, but this time in a straight line. And even though I hadn't seen or heard anything in the dark so far, that didn't mean there wasn't something waiting. I glanced at my flashlight, then backed up until my shoulders pressed firmly against the wall to reorient myself. Holding the flashlight in both hands, I aimed straight ahead and tossed it. It clattered loudly against the floor and spun around before coming to a stop. If anything was lurking in the room, it definitely knew where I was now. I froze and waited, listened. Nothing. After a minute or two, I took a few careful steps forward and retrieved the flashlight. Then I threw it again, another 15 feet or so. Repeating the process, step by cautious step, I gradually made my way across the room. Always listening, always watching, but hearing nothing. Somehow, I'd kept a straight path. The door was just a few feet off my projected line. Reaching out, I slowly gripped the doorknob. I turned it gently, fearing that I'd been tricked again and would be face to face with the snake once more. But this time, there was no trick, no snake. The door opened and light poured through, painfully bright after so long in the dark. I shielded my eyes, blinking rapidly, giving them time to adjust to the blinding glare. Once my eyes adjusted to the light, I took in the sight before me. A stunning room filled with clouds, not just overhead, but all around me. Even the floor was covered in a thick layer of what looked like real clouds, painted so masterfully that it gave the impression I was floating high above the earth. It was disorienting, to say the least. I hesitated at the threshold, unsure if stepping forward would send me plummeting into the sky. Holding my breath, I cautiously placed a foot onto one of the clouds, still clutching the doorframe. It was solid, a normal floor, just cleverly disguised. I took another step, then another, growing more confident as I moved deeper into the illusion. Once I adjusted to the surreal surroundings, walking across clouds actually became fun, lighthearted even. This room seemed like a dream compared to everything I'd faced so far. And then came the scream. It shattered the illusion in an instant, loud, guttural, and echoing from all directions. I dropped to the floor instinctively, realizing too late there was nowhere to hide. The white clouds and blue sky, painted on every surface, made concealment impossible. I stuck out like a beacon. The scream rang out again, and I bolted, not knowing where I was going or what I was running from. My only thought was escape, though for all I knew, I could have been heading straight into danger. I didn't get long to wonder. A shadow appeared overhead, growing rapidly as it descended. I barely had time to hit the ground before something sharp raked across my back. Pain exploded through me. I reached behind and felt my shirt torn to ribbons and warm blood covering my hand. The thing had sliced me. Fueled by panic and adrenaline, I shot to my feet and sprinted. I still didn't know what I was fleeing, but I had no intention of stopping to find out. Then I heard it, wings. I glanced back and saw it, a colossal bird of prey. It looked like a golden eagle, but impossibly large, its wingspan easily 20 feet across. I tried to keep running, twisting around for a better look, but my feet tangled and I fell backward. Just in time. Its talons slashed through the air where my face had been moments earlier. I scrambled back up, ignoring the pain in my back, and ran like hell. As I glanced back once more, I saw a smear of blood on the floor, my blood, streaked across a painted cloud. The surrealness of the image barely registered. The sound of powerful wings flapping told me it was close again. I could feel it closing in. This time, I was sure it wouldn't miss. There was only one option left. With everything I had, I jumped into the air and twisted around mid-leap, hurling my flashlight with all my strength. The metal flashlight struck the bird square in the head, just feet from my face. It shrieked and veered off, crashing hard into the floor with a thunderous impact that shook the ground beneath me. The massive body tumbled, coming to rest in a heap. I didn't bother looking back. The door was just ahead, and I pushed myself to squeeze out every last ounce of speed I had left. In one motion, I twisted the knob, flung the door open, and dove through, slamming it shut behind me. I hit the ground hard, gasping for air, chest heaving. I knew lying there made me an easy target for whatever nightmare might inhabit this new room. I rolled onto my back, readying myself for the worst, when I realized something strange. I was back in the main hall. Somehow I'd made it through the entire round, alive. And as far as I was concerned, this would be my last. I staggered toward the restroom, part of me expecting some new kind of madness to be waiting in there. Would I need to crawl through a mirror just to grab a roll of toilet paper? Thankfully, the bathroom was blissfully normal. No horrors, no tricks. I took off my shredded shirt and rinsed it in the sink, cleaning the blood from my back as best I could. After drying off, I pressed paper towels against the wounds and pulled my jacket over them. I spent the rest of the night at the desk, slumped in the chair, exhausted. To my surprise, that first round had taken nearly an hour. As I sat there questioning whether I could or should ever come back for another shift, something caught my eye. A dark patch appeared on the wall. Then it slowly peeled away and floated toward me. The temperature plummeted. I shut my eyes and stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. The smell of death wrapped around me like a thick fog. I didn't move. I heard something, maybe breathing or sniffing. It lingered for a moment, then drifted away. The temperature gradually returned to normal. When I opened my eyes, the thing was gone. Even with hours left to go, I had no temptation, none to start another round. At precisely 9 o'clock, the curator returned, gliding toward me with that unsettling smile tugging at his lips. "I see you made it," he said, almost amused. "Congratulations. You're the first in quite some time. The first to finish a single round?" He nodded. I stared at him, haunted. "How many came before me?" He didn't answer, just shook his head. "Let's not dwell on that, shall we?" he said smoothly. "Here's the payment we agreed upon." He handed me a thick stack of bills, which I accepted without hesitation. "Would you be interested in staying on as my permanent nighttime guard?" he asked, watching me closely. I glanced down at the money, then let out a long sigh. As tempting as it is, I'm not sure this job could ever be considered permanent with the amount of mortal danger involved. He nodded thoughtfully. "It is a challenge, I'll admit. But you met it head on last night. I'm prepared to double your pay if you agree to continue." I stared at the cash in my hands, already imagining the relief of never worrying about bills again. But when I shifted slightly, the sharp pain in my back reminded me what that money had nearly cost me. "I'd have to think about it," I said honestly. He tilted his head slightly. "While you're thinking, consider this. You haven't seen the basement yet." "Basement?" I repeated. He nodded again calmly. "It's considerably more challenging." "I'll let you know," I said, not quite sure I meant it. "Very well. See yourself out. I suggest having your back looked at." And just like that, he vanished, right before my eyes. I looked down at the stack of money, half expecting it to disappear too, but it stayed solid in my grasp as I walked toward the front door. For some reason, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the handle. It felt as though the building itself didn't want me to leave, as if some unseen force was trying to hold me back. Not in a threatening way, but in the same sad way a dog might react to losing its favorite toy. Still, I pushed the door open and stepped out. The sunlight hit me like a blessing. The experience had left me shaken and questioning my entire understanding of reality. One thought haunted me more than the rest. What if the things inside that building ever got out? And then the question that lingered in my mind: did I really need the money that badly? Was I truly willing to risk my life for cash? I turned back to look at the museum one more time. In the daylight, it looked peaceful, quiet, harmless. Nothing about its exterior hinted at the nightmares within. I started walking away, trying to put it all behind me. But just before I turned the corner, I thought I caught a glimpse of something dark and floating behind me. I stopped and looked again. Nothing. Must have been my imagination.